The text message came at 2:47 a.m., and it destroyed the illusion I'd been living in for 28 years. You need to see this. Meet me at the diner on 5th Street tomorrow morning.
Come alone.
David. My cousin David hadn't spoken to me in 3 years, not since his mother, my Aunt Patricia, and I had that falling out over Thanksgiving dinner. Whatever he wanted to tell me had to be serious enough to break years of silence. I couldn't sleep after that. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of the apartment I'd shared with my grandmother before she passed 6 months ago, wondering what could possibly be so urgent. Graham had been my everything after my parents died in a car accident when I was 9. She took me in without hesitation, raised me with fierce love, and worked as a seamstress well into her 70s to make sure I could go to college. When she died of a sudden heart attack last spring, my world shattered all over again. The grief was still raw. Some mornings I'd wake up and forget she was gone, starting to call out to her before reality crashed back in. Aunt Patricia, Graham's daughter, had been surprisingly supportive during those first terrible weeks. She helped plan the funeral, organized the reception, and checked on me almost daily. I thought we were finally healing the rift between us. I thought grief had brought us together. I was so naive. Growing up, I'd always known Patricia resented me. She never said it outright, but I felt it in the way she'd sigh when Graham bought me school supplies, or how she'd make little comments about Graham spoiling me. Patricia had 2 kids of her own, David and his younger sister Emma, and she constantly compared our lives. When I got a scholarship to State University, she made sure everyone knew her kids went to community college because some people got all the advantages. When Graham gave me her old car for my 16th birthday, Patricia didn't speak to her for 2 months. But I tried to be understanding. Patricia's husband had left her when the kids were young, and she'd struggled financially for years. I knew she felt like Graham chose me over her own daughter. In some ways, maybe she had. Graham and Patricia's relationship was complicated, full of old wounds I never fully understood. All I knew was that Graham loved me unconditionally, and I loved her the same way. After Graham died, her lawyer informed me that I was the primary beneficiary of her estate. The apartment where we lived, paid off years ago, was mine. Her savings account, about $65,000, was mine. A small investment account worth another $40,000 was mine. It wasn't a fortune, but it represented decades of careful saving and sacrifice. Graham had lived modestly, denied herself luxuries, and invested wisely to leave me something solid to build my future on. Patricia's reaction when the lawyer read the will was strange. She went very still, her face blank, and then smiled tightly. "Of course," she said. Mom always made her priorities clear. Then she hugged me and whispered, "We'll get through this together, honey." At the time, I thought she was being gracious. Now I know she was already calculating. I arrived at the diner at 8 o'clock sharp. David was already there, hunched over a coffee cup, looking like he hadn't slept either. He was 26, 2 years younger than me, and we'd been close as kids. His mom's resentment had eventually poisoned our relationship, but seeing him now, he looked like the scared little boy I used to protect from playground bullies. "Thanks for coming," he said, not meeting my eyes. "I didn't know if you would." "Your message sounded urgent." I slid into the booth across from him. "What's going on?" He pulled out his phone, hands shaking slightly, and turned it toward me. On the screen was a photograph of a document. I leaned closer, struggling to read it, then felt my stomach drop. It was a power of attorney form, dated 3 weeks before Graham died, giving Patricia complete control over Graham's finances and property. The signature at the bottom looked like my grandmother's, but something about it was off. The handwriting wavered in places Graham's never did. "Where did you get this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Mom's desk." I was looking for my birth certificate for a job application, and I found a whole folder of documents. There are more: amendments to the will, property transfer forms, bank authorizations, all dated from the last month of Grandma's life. He paused, swallowing hard. "Jen, Grandma had already been in the hospital for 2 weeks when some of these are dated. She was barely conscious. There's no way she signed these." The diner suddenly felt too hot, too loud. I couldn't breathe properly. What exactly is your mom trying to do? David looked miserable. I think she's planning to challenge the will. These documents would suggest Grandma wanted to change everything, that she wanted Mom to have control of the estate. If a judge accepts them as legitimate, you could lose everything. My mind raced. 3 weeks before Graham died, she'd been admitted to the hospital with chest pain that turned out to be the beginning of the end. I'd been there almost constantly, sleeping in the chair beside her bed, holding her hand through the worst of it. Patricia had visited, but not often. She'd said hospitals made her anxious. Now I wondered what she'd really been doing during those absences. Has she filed anything yet? I asked. Not that I know of, but she's been meeting with a lawyer. I heard her on the phone last week talking about estate redistribution and proving intent. She doesn't know I know about any of this. He finally met my eyes. I can't let her do this, Jen. It's not right. Grandma wanted you to have her estate. Everyone knows that. But Mom, she's desperate. Her boyfriend lost his job, and she's behind on rent. She sees this as her only way out. I felt something cold and hard forming in my chest. Patricia hadn't been supporting me out of love or family loyalty. She'd been staying close to monitor the situation, to wait for the right moment to strike. Every kind word, every helpful gesture had been a calculated move in a game I didn't even know we were playing. Can I have copies of those documents? I asked quietly. David nodded, already pulling up his email. I photographed everything. I'm sending them to you now. But Jen, you have to be careful. If Mom finds out I told you, she won't know it came from you. I promised. Thank you, David. This must have been hard. He shook his head, looking like he might cry. She's my mom and I love her. But this is wrong. Grandma took care of us too, in her own way. She didn't deserve this. And neither do you. If stories like this move you, we share them regularly. Real experiences from real people. Consider subscribing to hear more. I spent that entire day studying the documents David sent. The more I examined them, the clearer Patricia's scheme became. She'd created an entire paper trail designed to make it look like Graham had changed her mind in those final weeks, supposedly realizing she'd been unfair to her own daughter and wanting to correct the distribution of her estate. But there were problems with Patricia's forgeries, small details she'd overlooked because she wasn't as clever as she thought she was. The power of attorney was notarized by someone named Robert Kemp on a date when Graham had been in intensive care, unconscious, and on a ventilator. I knew this because I'd never left her side that day. I had the hospital visitor logs and my own social media posts timestamped to prove it. The amended will was even sloppier. It referenced accounts that Graham had closed years earlier and mentioned wanting to ensure my daughter Patricia is taken care of in her difficult divorce, except Patricia's divorce had been finalized 8 years ago. Graham would never have phrased it that way. I contacted Graham's lawyer, Mr. Chun, and sent him everything David had provided. He called me 2 hours later, his usually calm voice tight with anger. "This is fraud," he said bluntly. "Blatant criminal fraud. That signature doesn't match any of your grandmother's legitimate signatures on file. The notary seal looks suspicious. I'm betting it's either fake or the notary never actually witnessed anything. And the content of these documents contradicts everything your grandmother explicitly told me during our meetings about her estate planning. Can she actually use these in court?" I asked, terrified of the answer. "She can try. And if you weren't vigilant, if you didn't have these advance copies, she might have gotten away with it, at least initially. Courts see forged documents all the time, and they can be convincing. But we have advantages she doesn't know about. Your grandmother recorded video testimony about her wishes specifically to prevent this kind of challenge." I sat up straighter. "What video testimony?" 3 years ago, after your aunt made some comments about feeling excluded from the will, your grandmother came to my office and recorded a detailed statement. She explained exactly why she was leaving everything to you, talked about her relationship with Patricia, and explicitly stated she was of sound mind and not under any duress. It's legally admissible and incredibly powerful. Patricia has no idea it exists. Hope flickered in my chest. "So, what do we do?" "We wait," Mr. Chin said. "Let her file her challenge. Let her submit these fraudulent documents officially. The moment she does, she's committed a crime. Then we respond with the truth. The video, the expert signature analysis I'm already arranging, the hospital records that prove your grandmother couldn't have signed these documents. We don't just defend your inheritance. We expose her completely. Patricia filed her challenge to the estate 6 weeks after my meeting with David. She'd clearly been working on her strategy, consulting with a lawyer who was either incompetent or unethical enough to help her despite the obvious problems with her documentation. The court filing claimed that Graham had been coerced into making me the primary beneficiary, that I had isolated her from her daughter, and that the last-minute documents Patricia was submitting showed Graham's true wishes. Reading her claims was like being stabbed repeatedly. She painted me as a manipulative opportunist who had stolen her mother's affection and now was stealing her inheritance. She claimed I'd prevented her from visiting Graham in the hospital, that I'd monitored all their phone calls, that I'd systematically turned Graham against her own daughter. None of it was true, but she'd written it with such conviction, such detailed fabrication, that I could see how someone who didn't know us might believe it. The court date was set for 3 months later. Patricia started telling family members and friends that she was finally getting justice for what I'd done. Some people believed her. I received angry messages from distant relatives, accusing me of elder abuse and greed. It was devastating, but Mr. Chin kept reminding me to stay calm, to let the legal process work. 2 weeks before the hearing, Patricia reached out to me. She suggested we meet for coffee to talk about settling this without the ugliness of court. I agreed, curious to hear what she'd say face to face. She showed up perfectly put together, hair styled, makeup careful, wearing a sympathetic expression she must have practiced in the mirror. "I'm so glad you agreed to meet," she said, reaching for my hand across the table. I pulled away. "I just want to understand what you're doing," I said evenly. "Graham loved you. Why are you lying about her final wishes?" Patricia's mask slipped for just a second, revealing something hard and resentful underneath. Then the sympathetic look returned. "Honey, you're young. You don't understand how complicated family dynamics can be. My mother and I had a difficult relationship. Yes, but blood is blood. She wouldn't have wanted me to struggle while you got everything. These documents I found show she had second thoughts." "You didn't find those documents," I interrupted. "You created them. You forged Graham's signature on papers dated when she was unconscious in the ICU. You fabricated a power of attorney that was supposedly notarized when she was on a ventilator. Did you really think I wouldn't check?" Her face went white, then red. "You can't prove." "I can prove all of it. Hospital records, visitor logs, expert signature analysis. And that's not even the best part." I leaned forward. "Did you know Graham made a video testimony 3 years ago? She talked about you, about our relationship, about exactly why she structured her will the way she did. She was very clear about her wishes, Patricia. Crystal clear." I watched the realization dawn on her face. She'd been so confident, so sure I was too naive and grief-stricken to fight back effectively. She'd underestimated me the way she'd always underestimated me. "If you withdraw your challenge now," I continued, "I won't pursue criminal charges for fraud. You can walk away, and we'll never speak again. But if you go through with this court hearing, I will make sure every document you forged, every lie you told, is exposed publicly. You'll face legal consequences. Is that really what you want?" Patricia withdrew her challenge 4 days later. No explanation, no apology, just a terse legal filing dropping all claims against the estate. Mr. Chin called it a complete victory, but I felt hollow. Victory should feel better than this. David texted me, "Thank you for giving her a way out. I know she didn't deserve your mercy." Maybe I'd been merciful, or maybe I just couldn't stomach the idea of prolonged court battles and family warfare. Either way, it was over. But the damage Patricia caused wasn't over. Half my extended family still believed her version of events. I was uninvited from family gatherings, unfriended on social media, whispered about at the few events I did attend. Patricia had poisoned the well so thoroughly that the truth didn't matter to some people. They wanted to believe her story, the struggling mother victimized by her ungrateful niece, more than they wanted to believe mine. I sold Graham's apartment 6 months later. Living there had become painful, every corner holding memories that Patricia's betrayal had tainted. I moved across town, started fresh, tried to rebuild a life that felt separate from all the ugliness. The money from Graham's estate is invested now, growing slowly, providing security I'll never take for granted. I think about what it cost her to save that money, the overtime shifts, the repaired clothes instead of new ones, the vacations she never took. She sacrificed so much to give me stability, and Patricia tried to steal it because she felt entitled to her mother's money despite their broken relationship. I've learned things from this experience I wish I didn't have to know. Family doesn't guarantee loyalty. Love doesn't prevent betrayal. And sometimes the people who seem most supportive are actually just waiting for their opportunity to strike. But I've also learned I'm capable of fighting for myself. When faced with sophisticated fraud and elaborate lies, I didn't collapse. I investigated, gathered evidence, and defended what was rightfully mine. Graham would be proud of that, not because of the money, but because I stood up for truth. David and I have coffee occasionally now. He feels guilty about his mother's actions, though I keep telling him he's not responsible for her choices. His sister Emma still doesn't speak to me, convinced I somehow manipulated the situation. That hurts, but I've accepted I can't control everyone's perception. Patricia and I will never reconcile. She sent a card on my birthday last year, no apology, just a generic message about family bonds. I threw it away unopened. Some betrayals are too fundamental, cut too deep. You can't build a relationship on a foundation of fraud and lies. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if David hadn't found those documents, hadn't risked his relationship with his mother to warn me. Patricia might have succeeded. I might have spent years fighting court battles, might have lost everything Graham worked for. The thought makes me cold. But he did warn me, and I was ready when Patricia made her move. That's what she didn't expect, that the naive, grief-stricken girl she thought she could manipulate had grown into someone who would fight back. She underestimated my intelligence, my strength, and my love for my grandmother. Those miscalculations cost her everything. 2 years have passed since the court challenge was dropped. I'm 30 now, living a life Graham would recognize and approve of. I went back to school to finish my master's degree, something I'd put off when she got sick. The inheritance made that possible without drowning in debt. I work as a social worker now, helping kids who've lost parents navigate the foster care system, giving them the kind of advocacy Graham gave me. The apartment I live in is smaller than Graham's place, but it's mine. I decorated it with some of her things, her favorite quilt on my bed, her recipe box in my kitchen, photographs of us scattered throughout. When I cook her famous chicken soup or fold towels the exact way she taught me, I feel her presence. Patricia couldn't steal that. She couldn't steal the memories, the lessons, the love that shaped who I am. I think about forgiveness sometimes. Therapists say it's important for healing, that holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts Patricia. Maybe that's true. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation, and it doesn't mean pretending the betrayal didn't happen. I can forgive Patricia for being desperate and making terrible choices while still knowing I'll never trust her again. Those two things can coexist. What I can't forgive, what still makes me angry on bad days, is how she tried to rewrite history. Graham loved her, despite their complicated relationship. She mentioned Patricia in her video testimony with sadness, wishing they'd been closer, hoping Patricia would understand why she'd structured the will the way she did. Graham's choice wasn't about punishment. It was about practicality. I needed the stability. Patricia was an adult with grown children and her own income. But Patricia never saw it that way. She only saw rejection and unfairness. The inheritance controversy taught me that people reveal their true selves when resources are scarce and stakes are high. Patricia revealed she valued money over family, that she was willing to commit fraud and destroy relationships to get what she wanted. That knowledge is painful but useful. I know now to trust actions over words, to watch for patterns of behavior, to protect myself even from people who share my blood. I've also learned to appreciate the people who showed up with genuine support. My best friend Sarah, who sat with me through countless anxious nights during the legal battle. Mr. Chin, who fought fiercely to protect Graham's wishes. David, who risked everything to do the right thing. These people reminded me that integrity exists, that not everyone operates from selfishness and greed. The inheritance itself matters less to me now than what it represents. It's proof that Graham believed in me, trusted me, wanted me to thrive. Patricia tried to steal that validation, to rewrite the narrative so Graham's final act became about her instead of me. She failed, and in failing, she showed everyone who paid attention exactly who she really was. I drive past Patricia's apartment building sometimes. She works at a retail store now, lives modestly, her dreams of easy money through inheritance long dead. Part of me feels sorry for her. She lost her mother, destroyed her relationship with her niece, and damaged her connection with her own son over greed and resentment. But mostly I feel nothing. She made her choices. She lives with the consequences. My life is good now, not perfect, but solid and genuine. I date someone who makes me laugh, have friends who actually care about me, do work that matters. The inheritance gave me options, but I built this life with my own choices and effort. That distinction feels important. If I could tell Graham one thing now, it would be thank you. Thank you for loving me unconditionally, for working so hard to give me security, for being wise enough to document your wishes so clearly that not even Patricia's schemes could undermine them. You gave me more than money. You gave me an example of strength, dignity, and unconditional love. Patricia tried to steal your final gift, but she couldn't steal what mattered most, the person you helped me become. And if you're reading this and seeing yourself in any part of my story, know this: you're stronger than you think. When betrayal comes from family, when people you trusted exploit your grief and vulnerability, you have every right to fight back. You're not being cruel or unforgiving by protecting what's rightfully yours. You're honoring the people who loved you enough to provide for you. Patricia tried to steal my inheritance, but she didn't expect me to catch her in time. She didn't expect me to be strong enough, smart enough, determined enough to expose her fraud and protect what Graham left me. That was her mistake. And it's a mistake I'll make sure no one makes with me again. If this story resonated with you, we share powerful real experiences every week. Subscribe to stay connected. Your support helps us continue sharing these important stories.